are the Women's Super League champions.
The most amazing day for the Leeds Rhinos.
Warrington dominating.
Great try for the Robins. Huddersfield Giants take the points home.
It's Vincent! It's a poor lad.
It's one sensational try.
3 in a row. The Saints, the three-peat is achieved. An 8th grand final win for the Red Bee.
Hello and welcome to The Last Tackle, your weekly rugby league show on The Sportsman. I'm delighted to be joined by the voice of rugby league from Sky for 25 years, Eddie Hemmings, and a former Wigan, Warrington and Salford halfback, Kevin Brown. Gents, thanks for joining us. Let's just start with some news off the pitch. Rob Burrow got his MBE this week. First of all, let's just talk Rob, the player. I mean, what a player he was, Eddie.
Oh, unbelievable. I will never forget the grand final try he scored. And there he is getting his MBE off Her Royal Highness Princess Anne. God bless him. You know, God bless him. What a star he was and what a star he is to this day. But that grand final against St Helens, I think it was, and he weaved his way down the middle. He took them all on.
And it was tight in that final when he scored that try as well, wasn't it?
It was. That was probably the moment that Leeds knew that they were going to win it. It was a fantastic try underneath the posts. I mean, he was this big, wasn't he? He was, 4'6", and he used to take on the biggest, the beefiest, and he would never shirk anything. A wonderful, wonderful player. So sad to see him the way he is, but what he is doing for the awareness of motor neurons disease is just unbelievable.
Amazing. I think, going back to what you said about Rob Burrow, the player, the amount of times I've tried to tackle him and he's ducked under me and I've completely missed him and he'd come out the other side smiling. I just love the way that him and his wife Lindsay have took the challenge on, and the character that they've shown, and that they're, like you say, the amount of awareness they've raised is fantastic.
And off the field as well, he was such an engaging character. I'll never forget there was a grand final that I was doing in the commentary box, and the family were all there as well. And my little grandson, he was about 7 or 8 at the time, and we walked round the stadium, and the bus was waiting to take Leeds home, and there was Rob sitting down against the wall, absolutely exhausted. And Owen, my grandson, he was a massive fan of Rob Burrow, and he said, "Oh, Grandad, I said, come on, we'll go and talk to him." And Rob, exhausted as he was, with his ring on his finger, obviously, he took time to talk to him, signed his programme. What a wonderful bloke. And to this day, he is exactly the same from all accounts. As I say, just such a shame that the disease has taken him so badly. But fingers crossed he's around for a long more time to come.
And what his family and his friends are just doing is phenomenal, isn't it? I mean,
Absolutely.
Millions have been raised, but the awareness as well.
Absolutely. And imagine being Lindsay, the kids who's witnessing all this as well, but his mum and dad. Mum and dad, and they were down at the investiture as well with him. Every time I think about him, I get a lump in my throat. It's just horrible. But he's a role model, has been a role model, is a role model now for a totally different cause, and a great, great man.
Certainly is, and well deserved the MBE. So congratulations to Rob Burrow, and what he's doing off the pitch nowadays is just phenomenal. And obviously all the money raised is just fantastic as well. Let's talk about his old club. It won't be cheering him up at the moment, will it? His old club. What's going on, Kev, as an outsider? What's going on? 1 win in 8.
Yeah, well, things are pretty bad, and I think it's a little bit too soon to judge Jamie Jones on the back of his appointment, or he's stepped up, hasn't he? But I think the week off will do them good. They can get together, get a bit more contact time with Jones, at the front of it. But yeah, I just don't think they look together. We mentioned that group that Rob Burrow was part of, and how together they are, or were together when they were playing, and how together they are now rallying around Rob. I just don't see that in this current Leeds group. I think the togetherness and the culture is something that's so important in any team. I think we spoke about Wigan, how their culture's changed and the togetherness is better this year. But for me, it stems from that. It just doesn't seem a tight-knit group, and maybe there's a bit of a blame game.
Lost 5 at Henley. That's the worst start since 1898. How do you solve a problem like Leeds?
How do you solve a problem like Maria? Look, Gary Hetherington is in Australia as we speak, from all accounts. He was at the game on Friday and he watched the debacle, and that's the only way you can describe it against St Helens. I mean,
They weren't bad in the first half, were they?
Well, they were okay, but they never. I mean, Saints were magnificent defensively, but they never really threatened, did they? You never thought, oh, they're going to score here. They're going to score here. You always thought Saints would keep them out, and to be nilled. All right, by St Helens, champions for 3 times, get all that, but you're right, Kev. The spirit, it just isn't there. I mean, Blake Austin, Aidan Caesar. They haven't done it.
They've not got a lot of injuries. That's the worrying thing. They can't hide behind an injury crisis. They've all the marquee players are playing. I think one thing Leeds fans should, have a little bit is, Gary Everington's been around the block a lot. He's very experienced. They won't rush into things, and I think that club's in good hands, and they will come out the other side. How long it'll be, I'm not sure.
Off the pitch, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
the job they've done at Headingley. It's first class Headingley now, isn't it?
It's brilliant. Everything about the club's great, apart from the product on the field, just in this short period. But, that's sport, and I think, he won't rush into appointing a new coach. He's out there now, as Eddie says, and I'm sure they make the right decision and Leeds will be at the top very soon.
I think you're right that the club is in great shape off the field. I think they're one of the few Super League clubs that regularly and consistently post a profit in their end-of-year review,
but rightly so, Leeds fans are not bothered about that, are they? They want to sit on the pitch now.
No, exactly. They went through all this in the 1990s, didn't they, if you remember, and then the Rob Burrows, the Danny Maguires, the Kev Sinfields, the Jamie Jones Buchanans, the golden generation appeared on the horizon. They do have some great young players at Leeds, and they've just got to be allowed to blood them and bring them through. But Kev, supporters, they're impatient. Fans are impatient. Fans means fanatics. They are fanatics.
Yeah,
and they want to win every week.
They've been spoilt a little bit.
Spoiled rotten.
Spoiled rotten. That's part of the problem. I think when you've been successful for such a long time, it's an expectation, but it's a non-negotiable at a club like Leeds. So when things are a little bit shaky, rightfully so, it gets questioned.
It can't go on. It can't go on much longer because, we're going to be nearly a quarter of the way through the season shortly. They're already out of the Challenge Cup. No team has ever got to Old Trafford having lost the first 3. Well, they've lost all but 1. So they ain't going to Old Trafford this year. They're almost running out of time. I heard Barry McDermott on the television at the weekend, and even he, as a Leeds legend, is concerned. He doesn't really think Jamie Jones is the answer, and I don't think anyone can deny that he isn't the answer. I don't think Danny Maguire is the answer either, because he's only been in the job as an assistant.
Well, he's ruled himself out as well.
And he's ruled himself out. Tony Smith everyone's ruling themselves out of the job.
Yeah.
No one seems to want it. It seems to be between, I hear, Ryan Carr, I think he's with Parramatta Eels, or Shane Flanagan, who's out of the game at the moment. And I read somewhere on the website yesterday that they're actually trying to get Shane Flanagan's son as well as part of a deal to bring them across. But of course, Gary and the Leeds club remain tight-lipped about that. But this situation for the Leeds Rhinos cannot go on. They can't have a rudderless ship at Headingley for much longer. Otherwise, well, the season's almost gone now. And look at the crowd. Look at the crowd for the Challenge Cup tie.
Yeah.
I mean, when have you ever seen Headingley as empty as that? I know it was full last week for the visitors to St Helens, but for the Challenge Cup, was it 5,000? 5,000 at that stadium? It's empty.
Yeah. Well, a week off for Leeds because it is a Betfred Challenge Cup. But the loss to St Helens 26-0. James Roby played his 500th appearance for St Helens. What a player, Kev.
What a player, what a person, and the durability of the man. His performances over them 500 games have never been a poor one. I've never seen him have a bad game, and he's sort of like the Paul Scholes of rugby league. You sort of get used to him that much. You don't talk about it. We talk about Wellesby and Dodd and Lomax, but James Roby does what James Roby does every week, and he turns up and performs. And I've got no more words from him. That he's unbelievable. I saw him. I played with him as a junior, and what he's done as a player for St Helens, and he's a legend. And they'll probably have to build another statue alongside Kieran Cunningham's, I'd say.
Well, they will. I mean, Kieran is there in brass. Maybe James Roby should be dipped in gold, I mean, Steve-O and I dubbed Kevin Sinfield Sir Kev a long, long time ago. I'd put James Roby up for a Lord of the Realm. I mean, he's just been brilliant. Week in, week out, never lets the team down, and such a great bloke as well. I don't know whether you saw the interview. I was sitting in front of the telly last week, where's James Roby? Let's hear from James Roby. The next thing, he appears in the studio. with Brian and John Wilkin. Wow, didn't he talk well?
Such an humble bloke. I watched it too, and he's so humble, so well-mannered, and he's such a great bloke. So I roomed with him in Australia, and it was always, when you go into a room, it's like, oh, which room are you having on? Some lads dump the bag on the bed, but James is like, no, you choose. And mate, yeah, bro, he's such a tremendous fella, and that's part of the reason he's had such a good career.
Will he pack up? I got the impression on Friday.
Is he only fifth Saints player to reach that milestone?
Yeah.
I think he'd be chasing down a few more. I've spoke to Kyle Amor a couple of times. Look, on his performances, he could go round again, no problem. If he wants to do it.
If it was a grand final tomorrow, his first choice, isn't he?
Of course he is.
And I think that's the problem. They brought Joey Lussick in to sort of rest him, but when they do rest him, the performance levels dip for the club. So he plays big minutes because he performs all the time. So I think it's down to James whether he's still got that drive and wants to do it.
Well, he's talked about it, but he thinks it is his last season. I remember when he got the Man of Steel. If I remember rightly, the criteria for Man of Steel was the player who has made the biggest impact on the season. And, we sat around the table. I was part of the panel then that discussed and decided. And there were a number of names mentioned. And all of a sudden, out of well, hang on. James Roby comes off the bench virtually every week. This is earlier on. It was 2007, was he the Man of Steel? Anyway, whenever it was. It was earlier in his career. James Roby comes off the bench every week and makes a biggest impact in the game.
I think Darryl Clark did that.
Darryl Clark for a long time as well. James Roby, Man of Steel that year, because he made such an impact on the game when he came off the bench. And he's made a bigger impact when he's been starting as the first choice number 9. Brilliant player.
Look, as a former player, just put into words, how difficult is it to make 500 appearances and for one club?
It's impossible for the majority and good players.
It's a tough game.
Career. And in my position, it's impossible. But in James Roby's position, in the middle of the field, he's no bigger than me. He's playing in the middle of the field, playing against 18-stone blokes every week, making 50 tackles. The durability of the man is one thing. How consistent he's been is another, and how he just keeps his feet on the floor and does it and leads by example is just tremendous too.
Please God, he's not lost to the game. Please, he doesn't get lost to the game when he eventually does hang his boots up. St Helens, I'm sure, will try and embrace him in the setup in some way. But Kevin Sinfield at the moment is lost to the game. He's on the dark side. He's in rugby union.
Well, it's a huge blow, isn't it?
Yeah, but let's hope.
Someone like Kevin Sinfield.
Let's hope. I mean, Kevin will come back. I've no doubt about that. Let's hope we don't lose another in James Roby.
Right, let's just talk about the other games before we talk about the Betfred Challenge Cup. So, Wigan 1918 versus Hull on Thursday. That was a cracker. I think we mentioned this last week, and you've touched on it. Marty Pete is beginning to get things right at Wigan. This is a Wigan that, you probably played under, isn't it?
Yeah.
More of traditional Wigan now.
Yeah, and we mentioned the different styles of wins he's got them doing. This week was a grind. It was a very good, we mentioned Luke Gale being back, Manu Mao being back, McIntosh being back, and they threw a lot at Wigan, but ultimately Wigan were good enough. They put Bevan French back in off the bench. They sneaked him onto the wing. I think there's an headache there down the corner. I think he's a little bit wasted on the wing. If they could change the game a little bit and have 2 fullbacks, I think they could compete with St Helens. For me, if they get Jayfield and Bevan French playing as good as they can in the same team at the same time, they'll challenge everyone.
Jayfield is superb.
Jayfield is fantastic. I mean, he is like a new player for them because he was here last year and hardly played because he was badly injured with the hamstring. He's come back in this year now and he has revolutionised them. He's so quick. Is it 9 tries already? Leading the Man of Steel votes by a considerable margin at the minute. I would also like to give a little mention to the youngster, Harry Smith. He's played 3 times this year and he's won the game for them twice with drop goals. Is it any coincidence that perhaps the greatest exponent of the drop goal is now on the coaching staff at Wigan? I'm talking about Lee Breers, my old mate. There's a man who could kick a drop goal from anywhere. And here's a young man, 3 games, he's dropped 2 drop goals and he's won them 4 points already this season.
Yeah, and I think the way they're setting up the drop goal, I think that has got Breers' stamp all over it. They don't just throw the ball to Harry. There's players around that as well. But I agree with what you're saying about Jayfield. I think without him, they probably lose a few more games than they've won, definitely.
He's really quick. He is
great
really
player,
quick.
great coach.
I was doing a Steve-O, I was screaming at the telly on the other night. drop goal. Even when Hull, drop a goal, drop a goal.
What about Catalans? Obviously, they didn't have the best travel arrangements in the end, did they? Arriving very late, but a second defeat for Catalans.
I've got some sympathy
Only
for them.
the second defeat.
Only the second defeat. Some sympathy for them. But I will say this. This is a professional sport. If you take the chance on flying on the day from the south of France to the UK in the winter, the spring and the summer.
That's what we did all last season on it. He said it worked better for him.
Yeah, well it did, and I understand that. But perhaps at this time of the year when the weather is a little bit dodgy from time to time, maybe they should, I know it's all about this, it's all about the money, it's all about cutting costs. Maybe they should be in this country by the day of the game. I don't think it was a good look. And I know a war of words broke out between Ian Watson and Steve McNamara. And Ian Watson was adamant, they should have made sure they were here. We've had our players here for half the day. The crowd's here as well. And Steve McNamara rightly pointed out to the fact that they've invested so much in getting to this country over the past couple of years. They've flown in and out. I mean, it's about £30,000, I think, to hire a plane. So it's a lot of cash that we're talking about here. And they've done it consistent. This is one little hiccup for them. But they got there, I think it was beyond the scheduled kick-off time.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out for them.
No, and I think that's the thing. It's a one-off.
Yes.
They've been in the competition a while now and it's a one-off, so you've got to give them a little bit of grace. They're doing it every other week, but no, I agree. It's disappointing for the fans and the team.
And the
when
image
you're
of the sport. The image of the sport. We've got a game that's kicking off half an hour late because the team hasn't shown up. Having said that, Warrington travelled across the M62 to Hull Kingston Rovers. They got in roadworks and they turned up late as well. So what do you do? Should all the teams get going first thing in the morning? I mean, I know what the M62 is like.
Well,
on a Friday night, you do as well, Kev. It's a nightmare.
For some reason, they always seem to close junctions on Thursday and Friday nights when rugby league's on, but that's a different show.
Should the clubs decide, right, we're going to go at 11 o'clock in the morning on Friday or Thursday, we're going to go to wherever, and we're going to have a
To be honest, the
get-together.
majority of the time, that's what I've done as a player when we've travelled quite a substantial distance. We get in an hotel, we don't have a sleep, but we'll have a team feed together. Drop your shoulders for a little bit and you're on time, because there's nothing worse than the anxiety that brings as a player in how mental we all are before.
Right, well, you mentioned Warrington, and sorry about this, but as a former Warrington player, look, turning up late is not the biggest problem at the moment, is it? I mean, that's 5 defeats on the bounce. What is going on at Warrington?
Yeah, I think expectations absolutely riddled them this year. The expectation, me and Eddie were speaking before about how confident we were that Darryl Powell was going to go in and make a change, and I still believe he will. I still believe he will.
He's an excellent coach.
He is an excellent coach, and he's the right man for the job. But I think from where they've been and where they want to get to, there has to be a period of change, because it's a big change what they want. They want to win the grand final. They've not won it. So it is a big change, and I think we expect it it's only one game. They've played in the grand final a few times, but no, it's a big change. And I think mentally they're being held accountable now. And the group has just gone from one sort of side of the scale to the other, and it's not been able to cope with it. And alongside that, I do feel that they're missing some firepower up front. Recruitment-wise hasn't been great. I think they need a couple of big boppers or knuckles in the middle.
Knucklers, yeah.
And if they get that, I don't think they'll be far off. But yeah, there's a few tough days ahead, I'm sure.
And Darryl is talking about his players somewhat disparagingly.
Darryl's been very honest.
He has been honest, but he has criticised them publicly. Yeah. I think I read a quote this week saying the fans have got every right to be fuming watching this group of players. Yeah. So something is going drastically wrong. You're right. They're a bit light up front. No question about that. It's all right for asking the likes of Kev and whoever to play behind a beaten pack. It's impossible. You'll know better than anybody. Impossible.
It is. And I think that was my worry of him going into, because he's such a structured coach. When it's right, it's brilliant. But there needs to be some generated play of the ball through the middle of the field to allow Darryl Clark to run and Gareth Widdop and George Williams to play. At the minute, they've got a lot of similar types of players who are very small and they're being dominated up front.
My mate Warrington said about 2 years ago, well, you need 2 knucklers, you need 2 ball handling forwards, and you need a schemer. He said that's the basic of your pack. I saw him last week. He said, forget that. We need 6 knucklers. We need 6 knucklers now. We need someone to really take us forward. You can't argue with that. You can't argue with it.
You can see why Warrington fans are pretty naffed off it right now.
Oh, and it doesn't help the fact that Chris Hill's form and Huddersfield's form on the back of his leadership, and how he's playing through the middle, you know, he's been let go, and it looks like a really poor move. You know, now in hindsight, I think it's really easy, but yeah, as a Warrington fan, you're scratching your head, I think, a little bit.
I don't think they're blaming Darryl Powell though. I don't think they don't believe he is the problem from the people I speak to. They think this has been coming for a year or so, and you hit the nail on the head earlier on. The recruitment has not been what it should be for a club like
I think
Warrington.
there's 17 off contracts at the end of the year, so they just need to get through this year. And I still think there's good times at the club this year. But it's like Leeds, it needs to happen quite quick.
They need to put a run in.
Yeah, they need to put a run. But it only takes 1 or 2 games sometimes to change the confidence. But I still definitely believe Darryl Powell's the man for the job.
Well, they won 3 in a row at the start of the season, didn't they? You know, they did. They proved that they can win a game. But the 5 games in a row is not helpful. Not helpful to them at all.
Right, Cass got their second win in the Super League, and Wakefield's good run continued as well. We'll talk about those 2 teams because they're still left in the Betfred Challenge Cup. So this is the Sportsman, your new home of Rugby League. This week we showed you Keighley beating Doncaster. We've got plenty more live games coming up.
Don't miss a thing from the new home of Rugby League online.
Follow The Sportsman on social media.
And follow the YouTube channel for exclusive content.
So plenty more games coming up. We're going to be bringing you some Betfred Women's Super League matches, some wheelchair matches as well, more League One action as well. So keep watching this channel. Right, let's turn our attention to the Betfred Challenge Cup. It's getting to the business end now, isn't it? Quarter-final stage.
And all 8 teams are from the Super League, so the days of the big shocks in the Challenge Cup are gone, it would appear. There's some tasty matches. I mean, Catalan Saints is the big one. Live free-to-air on TV in France for the first time, the Catalan Dragons. Great news for them.
Brilliant.
Live on the BBC, so to a national audience over here. They're talking about a full house again. Remember when they had a full house last year and they walked up the red carpet, the Catalan Dragons players with all the
flares.
When the flares go in and the red and that was when they won the League Leaders Shield. Last week was a setback for Catalan, but hey, they haven't got to travel this week. They've not got to travel this week and they've got a score to settle with the Saints.
Well, it's the toughest draw for the St Helens. Good game, isn't it?
If they're going to win the Cup, this is the weekend, maybe you can say they might win it if they get through Catalan. Really, you know.
Most teams that win the Cup have the toughest draw, don't they? They get the form, they get battle-hardened. But yeah, I think Catalan's rested a few as well against Huddersfield. Mitchell Pearce didn't fly, he didn't play.
And he's beginning to look like...
He's massive. Mitchell Pearce...
The player they expected to sign now, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. The spine they've got there is as good as and can challenge anyone. And they'll have to be as good as anyone to challenge that St Helens defence because we've mentioned before how brutal that's been all year. You know, the aggression that they've got. But they're missing a few, aren't they? They're missing Regan Grace, they're missing Vitautia. So I agree with what you're saying. It's by far the toughest draw to go over and play a very good Catalan side. Full boat, full house. What a game it's going to be.
It'd be fantastic. Is Alex Walmsley fit? There's the other big question mark.
I don't
think
so.
he is he?
I don't think
Although
so.
they didn't miss him last week at Leeds.
Let's talk about the games in detail, but let's hear from a former St Helens player who knows all about winning the Challenge Cup.
Pretty much everything, to be fair. Being a Wigan lad and born in Wigan, with the success they had throughout, the late 80s and the 90s. My first game was watching Wigan and Hull in the 84-85 when I was about 8 or 9. And then I've carried on watching them throughout the generation of all the Wigan wins, when they won 7 or 8 on the bounce. So it meant everything. And I remember saying to my dad, when I was about 9, I want to play in a Challenge Cup final. And he just looked at me as though I was mental, but that's all I wanted to do, just to play and experience the atmosphere and win the trophy in the Challenge Cup final. So I was literally brought up with it. It's so hard because everyone's trying to knock you off and you're the holders, and everyone wants to beat the holders of the Challenge Cup, whether it's in round 5 or round 4 or semi-final or the final, they always want to smash you. so every game's a big game, not just the final. But I've always feel like once you've had a taste of success in the Challenge Cup final, you want it more and more and more. So obviously I had a success in 1 and 04, but some lads hadn't. So when we won it in 6, new lads had a taste of it. They wanted it even more. So we was like, how good is this? So we went again and again. And I do believe that once you've had that taste of success, you just want it even more. And yeah, I think it's been proven as well. Like Warrington's won it a couple of times without bounce. I think Hull's won it a couple of times without bounce. You know, it's a great feeling. You just want to be part of that feeling. You know, the best part about it is the coach journey on the way home. You know, having catch up with all your mates, and then the open top bus going through town. That's the best feeling in the world. Well, for me, it just looks like a magnificent stadium, somewhere different in it, and I think it's not far from the mixer, as we call it. You know, where you can get out and about and have a few beers for all the fans. Which the one I liked was the Cardiff one, because you were straight out and with all the fans and celebrating with them. So, yeah, I'm sure it'd be a fantastic venue. You know, I've only seen it on TV what a super stadium it is, and you know, every player in Super League now who's still in the cup will be wanting to play in that game. I'll guarantee that.
Yeah, Sean Long with his Challenge Cup memories, and talking, of course, the final this year is at the Tottenham Stadium, and I was lucky enough to go just before Christmas with the RFL to have a look around. It's a fabulous stadium, and so well thought out.
It's going to be a unique occasion, isn't it? Because it's probably the first and maybe, who knows, the last time that it'll be at the Tottenham Stadium. So there's a little bit of history that is awaiting this year's winners. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic competition. No doubt about that. The oldest and the biggest and the best knockout tournament in rugby league. I mean, Kev, you've been there. You've got the T-shirt. You've got the medals. You know,
I've loved everything about the Challenge Cup, and I think it's one thing that we have over the NRL. The history and the prestige around that competition is something that all the Australians and the Kiwis that come over love. The fact that they're in a cup. They don't have a cup in the NRL in Australia, so they come over here, and every kid who plays rugby league in England wants to play in the cup final. And you always think of Wembley, but we were mentioning before we played at Cardiff and played in that, and that was brilliant. And Longy speaks about that game. And but going to Tottenham, no one's sampled that feeling. So everyone who's played, whether you've played in finals or not before, you won't know what's coming, and fans the same. So everyone will be desperate to get there, and it'll be a really good day out.
Let's talk about the 4 quarter-finals then. So Friday night, live on Premier Sports, we've got Hull KR versus Castleford. Castleford were beaten finalists last year. How do you see this, Hull KR versus Cass?
Yeah, I think Hull KR are probably the favourites out there. They go there and it'll be a big crowd. It was a sellout last week. They dismantled Warrington and took them to bits. I think the former Lachlan Coote and Mikey Lewis in particular are an handful for anyone. But Cass coming off a good win too against Toulouse, so that they'll go there as underdogs. But you know, Lee Radford's got a bit of form in the cup too, so you know you can't write them off.
You can't, no. I mean, and you say Lee, rightly so. You know, he did the impossible. He got Hull to win at Wembley 2 years on the bounce. So he has got the Challenge Cup coursing through his veins as well. It's a tough one to call, I think, this, because you're right, Mikey Lewis shows up each and every week when we see him. You know, Lachlan Coote, they think he was going to be the joker in the pack. He's hardly played this year for various reasons because of injury and all that sort of business. But I mean, every game, to me, has got great attraction stamped all over it, you know, and they're all live on TV somewhere. Yep. And, you know, it's going to be a hell of a sporting weekend.
Saturday, the big one. Catalan Dragons versus St Helens. It was 28-8 St Helens, beginning of a season. Of course, Saints won the grand final. Last time we met in the Challenge Cup was that semi-final in 2018 when Catalans beat St Helens 35-16.
It's too tough to call. It really is too tough to call. The Catalan Dragons will be annoyed about the reaction they got from last week because of the travel problems. As I say, they haven't got any travel problems this week. They've virtually had a full week of preparation for it. Saints have got the problem to get down to the south of France, whether they're going Friday or Saturday morning, I don't know. I suspect they'll be going Friday to make sure, because it's a 2:30 kickoff in the UK. But St Helens are unique, aren't they, in the game at the moment? You know, they're so tough in defence. I think the fact that Walmsley isn't playing could be a major part of it. But Roby will be there. Morgan Knowles will be there. They're all talking about Joe Westerman at the minute being the best 13 in the game. I think you've got to go some to beat Morgan Knowles the way he has been playing consistently. Johnny Lomax, to me, we do talk about Johnny Lomax probably too much, but a lot of people ignore him.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, he's been the best player in Super League for the last couple of seasons. He never gets a run for Man of Steel.
No,
never.
It's because he's got too many teammates who are taking points off him each week. I think Wellesby and Dodd and the young kids coming through. I'm really interested in this game. I think, going back to that semi-final with Catalan, Steve McNamara said he came up with a plan to beat St Helens over a period of time, and they worked on that plan. And I think they've targeted this game probably at the expense of last week's result. And St Helens have had the emotion of James Roby's 500th game, and so I don't think they never take their eye off this game. But I think Steve McNamara has had tunnel vision on this, and I fancy Catalans. I really do fancy Catalans in this game.
And then on Saturday as well, live on Premier Sports, Huddersfield versus Hull.
Yeah, for me, two real form teams. Huddersfield obviously beating Catalans, who we spoke about how good they are. The former Chris Hill, Luke Yates and Tui Lolohea especially, they're leading the charge there. But Hull FC as well, just sneaking the way through, building a bit of form. They've won, I think, 3 out of 5 of the last 5 games. Narrow loss at the weekend, but they get a couple more back. They get Reynolds back this week, who's crucial. He's such a competitor in the halves, and Carlos Tumavavi as well. So they got Gale, Manu Mau back last week, who were key. So they're going to go there, full stack, fully complemented squad, and real challenge this very, very good Huddersfield side.
Yeah, and BBC Two Sunday, Wakefield Trinity versus Wigan. Now, I think this is fascinating. A month ago, you just said Wigan. But now Wakefield are playing, aren't they?
And at home too. And the home advantage is so important at this stage of any cup competition. Yeah, they're playing well. Wakefield are playing well. Just ask Warrington. They beat them 2 weeks on the bounce, got them out of the cup as well. We all had our doubts about Wakefield, but the Tom Johnson business is also important for them. I think he was brilliant for 40 minutes at the weekend.
Crucial.
From all accounts. 2 tries, then he gets a back injury. The fitness of Tom Johnson, for me, for Wakefield, is vital. It's a tough one to call because the other mob are such a huge team, aren't they? Massive team.
Come on, you're not on Sky anymore. You don't have to sit on the fence. Come on, call it.
Wigan are playing well. Wigan have got all the tradition of the Challenge Cup. They should have too much for Wakefield, if I'm honest. Tom Johnston's fitness is crucial. If he's there, who knows? But hey, we're not talking about walkovers.
No,
we're not talking about teams that are going in.
Every team in the quarters are in form.
They are.
And can state a case for winning the cup.
And the draw will be at half time of the Wakefield versus Wigan game live on the BBC. And good luck to the Betfred Women's Challenge Cup quarterfinals. Leeds versus Warrington, St Helens versus Huddersfield, York City Knights versus the Alton Radettes, and Featherstone Rovers versus Wigan. So good luck to the Betfred Women's Challenge Cup as well. Right, we're running out of time. Who wins the Betfred Challenge Cup then?
Off you go, Kev.
I think whoever wins in Catalans and Saints for me. I don't.
Well, they'll go favourites, definitely. Yeah. Whoever wins
but
that time.
I think St Helens. If Saints play the best, I've not seen anyone this year that can compete with Saints' best.
Well, that's true. That is true. But we're all tipping St Helens for everything. If they're running in the derby this year, we'd be saying Saints would win the derby, wouldn't we? The Grand National next weekend, Saints will win the Grand National. They're under such pressure, St Helens. You're right. If they get through this, they're going to be favourites by. They
might be creaking a little bit as well.
But what you were saying now is you quite fancy Catalans to give them a game and possibly win as well.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's how good the competition is, I think. And you couldn't write any of the other teams off as well. If they put in a performance, everyone's capable of beating each other. That's why it's so exciting.
It is a whole derby final or a Wigan Saints final. You know, Catalan coming across and having another bash at the final. Could work anyway.
What I do know, it's a brilliant weekend of sport because we've got the Masters golf on for 4 days. We've got Liverpool versus Man City on Sunday.
I can't sleep.
And we've got the Grand National on Saturday night and the Betfred Challenge Cup. It is an outstanding weekend of sport. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Kev and Eddie for coming in. So enjoy the Betfred Challenge Cup. Good luck to all the teams left in the competition.